Hello, everyone. My name is Jedi Mike 7, and this is my review of Loki, Episode 1. So, Loki is a very popular show that's been highly anticipated, obviously, after the events of WandaVision, and especially after Falcon Winter Soldier. Out of those three shows, this is the one that I was like uh, least like anticipating for, mainly because the fact of Loki. I'm a fan of him, other than in Thor movies, but as a character, I'm not really kind of that indulged with him in the comics. But obviously, as Tom Hiddleston in the MCU is completely different. And I didn't just know what they were going to do with the show, how they're going to structure the show, and what was it going to be about. And when they were adding the time variance authority and other stuff, I didn't know what to expect. But obviously, I gotta say, this is by far the best episode opening of any Disney Plus show for Marvel so far. So we're gonna go through. The way I'm going to structure this review, I'm going to go over the synopsis of the episode and the structure of everything that happened, and I'm going to give my points and pros and cons about what I like about the episode and my overall score at the end. So let's get on to the episode. So this season, the beginning of this episode starts right after the events of Avengers Endgame, where Loki is basically about to steal the Tesseract after the Avengers are trying to go back in time in the year of 2012 to get the time and Mind Stone. The Tesseract and the Mind Stone. And after the accident happened, eventually Loki had the got the Tesseract in hand, and then he just dipped. And that's all we saw in Endgame. And then this is where it picked right after we left off. And I gotta say, I felt like they did a really good job. Even the different scenes at the same event we've basically been seeing for the last like 2 or 3 years with Endgame, just seeing different angles and stuff like that. I feel like the way they shot it very well. But then we follow him, and he can capture immediately by the TVA. Now the TVA, as he got caught by one of the characters, Hunter B-15, and this actress, she was actually in Lovecraft Country. I'm very happy to see her again. And the interaction they have with them, him seeing him as a god and thinking that these guys are just going to be nothing, just another people just to take over, and unfortunately for him, they're actually more powerful than he thinks. I said the TVA is the new aspect of them in the MCU. It's something we never like seen before. Obviously, we've seen Shield, we've seen Hydra, we've seen AIM, we've seen a bunch of other organizations, but the TVA is something completely different. One of the things that I felt they did very good in the show, they very explained the concept of time travel. Now, time travel is basically the concept that's been used in Back to the Future, obviously Avengers Endgame, and many other movies. And because of this, they can basically use a MacGuffin just for filling out plot holes and not really being consistent in terms of following the rules of time travel. But what this show did actually very well, they actually explained the concept of time travel, but also explained the concept of the multiverse. And they basically explained that the timeline, or the sacred timeline, is built and protected by the timekeepers. Now, many years ago, there was a multiverse war, and basically the timekeepers basically established a sacred timeline, and any person that will go outside the current timeline they will create a nexus event that will basically cause variance. Hence, was what this Loki is, which is Loki variant. And I gotta say, this was very giving a lot of nods to obviously with WandaVision, obviously with Multiverse of Madness, and also hopefully recently going into December with the new Spider-Man film. And I feel that they're just beating the head over multiverse. And I think they're gonna do a really good job explaining it. Just within this first episode, it was very self-explanatory. Now, the Time Variance Authority, what are they? Time Variance Authority is an infinitely vast bureaucracy that governs a significant number of realities in the ever-growing multiverse. The organization has dedicated itself to keep tabs on every reality that exists. Now, I gotta say, I felt like whoever the person is for the set design, it very gave off from the FX show Legion, a very giving vibes of that as well, but also vibes of the Umbrella Academy as well. And I thought the way they structured this time the set design, it looks very different from the MCU, but yet feel like it also belongs there. It's very constantly expanding, which I like. So going into the episode, Loki's taken to the Time Variance Authority, and he's presented to trial for his crimes against the sacred timeline, and he goes against the TVA. And basically, what happened is that they decided that, okay, yeah, you're guilty of these crimes. Obviously, there's some Loki has some witty banter, but then all of a sudden, as soon as he can getting ready to basically be wiped from existence, then comes Mobius and Mobius. and this is played by Owen Wilson. First off, I just want to say I think Owen Wilson did a very good job just in this episode. Owen Wilson as an actor is basically I can't see anything else but Owen Wilson. But Marvel, by casting him doing this show, it's almost he's a chameleon, like almost like he's not recognizable as Owen Wilson other than his voice. But it gave something in a new range of his acting that I haven't really seen before, and I thought they did a really good job. So the reason when he comes into the story is that basically in the Time Variance Authority, there are a bunch of his units are being killed by a Time Variant who we don't know until the end of the episode, and all of a sudden, Mobius is brought by Loki's case, and then he steps in the court hearing to intervene. And then this is where we get into the episode where which I think was one of the best scenes of this episode, just Mobius and Loki sitting down and going over Loki's timeline and asking the simple question, why do you like hurting people? And basically, it's almost like another therapy session. Just like the events of Falcon Winter Soldier and Bucky going through therapy, and obviously with Wanda who needs therapy, and obviously she's not done yet. Obviously, going to Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness, I think they did a really good job just in storytelling of actually constructing the scene and actual dialogue being the narrative that's driving the story. Just as like films like The King's Speech and also the HBO show Euphoria, Rue Part 1, when there's just a scene with just done with Zendaya in the diner talking, that dialogue was just driving force of that scene, and I felt was very good. And I felt like this is kind of going to the point of switching from, oh, a good Marvel movie is now just, oh, not just having explosions, aliens, and laser beams and all this stuff. Just the best scene can just be two characters sitting down talking. And I think that's what's good. And it shows effective screenplay. Whoever the screenwriter is, shouts to you, because this was a great scene. So basically, Owen Wilson going over Loki's history and then going over to one part of his timeline, which was just showing just the power of what they're showing the TVA, knowing not only your past, your present, but also your future. But then what happened is that the scene shifts into going to a more sentimental route where Loki is then showing the events of Thor, the Dark World. Now, this variant hasn't even experienced that. We've seen the Loki, obviously, in the MCU, in the movies, seen that continuing thread, but this Loki scene is for the very first time. And he's actually seen the events of actually when he was in the cell talking to his mother, and actually when the Dark Elves attacked, that he directed them right to Frigga, where basically he killed his mother. And obviously he's just reacting to that in a very emotional way. I think Tom Hiddleston conveyed the emotion very effectively, and I'm just very happy the fact that we're seeing the overarching story of Loki, which we've seen the last 10 years in Thor: The Dark World, the Avengers, Thor: Ragnarok, and also coming to the point of beginning of Infinity War, seeing the overarching the cycle of his character from learning that he's not actually a evil person, deep down inside. And I thought they did very well. But this basically caused him to go out the rails, and obviously being the god of mischief, he basically tried to cause havoc and try to escape. But this doesn't happen until eventually he goes sees his death, which is obviously because of events of Infinity War, where he sees Thanos and actually reacting to his death, and in a way that like he not experienced that he's not this immortal god that he thought he was. But going to this scene, he actually goes later and escapes. TVA try to go find him, and then he goes to one of the desk clerks over there who was talking beginning of the scene, and he trying to get the Tesseract back. And then when he goes trying to find a Tesseract, he ends up finding out that that's not the only Infinity Stone that's in the TVA. What they find out is that time stones, the Infinity Stones, anything like that, are rarely used as a paper holders, which I thought that was just kind of just showing the meta joke of how these MacGuffins that we've been following for the last 10 years, these powerful pieces of stones that are obviously have the same amounts of power in the MCU are now just reduced to just simple paper holders. And I just thought that was very well. But eventually he goes back into the scene where when he goes back into the room with Mobius, and then finally sees his death by Thanos, until a point where obviously Hunter B-15 attacks him, and then he eventually got the upper hand and putting the time device they used to just trying to control him. And I thought the way they're using the piece of technology in the show was actually very good, and felt that it was just a new way of power in the MCU that we haven't really seen before. But next we go back to Loki just basically gave up, and he's right back into the scene with Mobius. And he's just talking to him and saying that eventually he come to full circle, saying that he doesn't enjoy hurting people. And I feel like the line of this episode that they gave was the fact that that it's all part of the illusion. It's a cruel, elaborate trick conjuncted by the weak to inspire fear. and the weak was Loki. And that's basically becoming that he's basically projecting his insecurity and projecting the fact that he just wants to be wanted. But going through his timeline, watching himself, he saw that his mother loved him. He saw that his father Odin, who he was seeking love for, loved him at the end. Even Thor, seeing the best of him and seeing in the events of Thor Ragnarok, talking that he's showing that he loved Loki even despite of everything he done. And this is kind of going to the pack of uh, the point of the episode. The favorite line they gave was saying that it's a cruel, elaborate trick to conject by the weak to inspire fear. It's a desperate play for control. And I think this is going to what Loki is seeking, that he just wants to be in control of his life, because most of his life, first in the events of the first Thor, he was lied to. He thought he was part of this family and jealous of his brother, but really he was never part of them to begin with. He was adopted. So I just thought this was very good, effective storytelling that they did. I think that going into the overarching story of this season, I still might be unclear, but I just think that this is only an ounce of the amount of writing and that they're doing with this show that really has very minimal action in this episode, but just more of the dialogue I feel was the best part of this. I just cannot wait to see what's going on in the next episodes. Now going into the final scene of the episode, the time variant that they've been killing units in the TVA. Eventually, Owen Wilson is trying to seek the help from Loki, and then he said, "You want the god Mischief to help you find his variant? Why? Why do you need me?" He said, "Because the variant that we're looking for is you." And I think this is going to, at the end, we see this mysterious character who we don't know who's revealed yet, but we think might be Sofia Di Martino, who's also theorized to be a Lady Loki. And one of the also interesting things in the episode that you notice is that when you look at Loki's file and you see his name, his weight, all that other stuff, you also see his sex, and it says his sex as gender fluid, which I basically just a nod, thinking that the time variant that we're looking for is not just another version of him, but actually a completely different Loki, which is a female Loki, and which is going to, what I hope, theorize in the coming episodes, that not just this female Loki, but I hope we also see other versions of Loki as well. Obviously, if you've seen the continuing thread of WandaVision, the Falcon and Winter Soldier, they've been setting seeds of the Young Avengers. For example, in WandaVision, you had Billy and Ted, who was also Wiccan and Speed. In Falcon and Winter Soldier, you also had Isaiah Bradley grandson, Eli Bradley, as a Patriot, and also who's also part of the Young Avengers is Kid Loki. So I think we might be seeing different versions of Loki, which might be very fun scenes to interact with, especially with Tom Hiddleston, with other actors who have not been name listed yet. I just cannot wait to see what they do with the rest of the episode. But my only criticism of this with this episode, I feel, was honestly just the fact that a little some of the jokes are kind of weren't landing very well, but I didn't feel like I was more intrigued than confused. That makes sense. Because the main point I really had an issue was just when they're explaining the whole concept of time travel. Is basically just said, "Hey, here's the rule, deal with it," instead of saying, "Hey, this logically does not make any sense." And I feel, for as fans, either we just want to be hypercritical about it, but even though this whole timeline thing does not make sense, and what they explained with Avengers Endgame, saying that them going back in time would not cause any different pathways in the timeline, even though Captain America basically came back and stayed with Peggy Carter, living with her. And did that and then my question to that is, did that make him a time variant? We don't know, but whatever this implies to the story, we do know that based on the rules of time variance authority, everything that the Avengers did in Endgame was supposed to happen within the sacred timeline. So I guess we just have to deal with that. But that's my only criticism of this episode, really. I think this, like, again, I give this episode a whopping 9. Well, no, that's not a whopping 9. Whopping 8 out of 10. This was by far the best opening episode for Marvel Disney Plus so far. And we do know that this show is going to eventually get a season 2, unlike the other shows. So I don't even know what's in stores for what's coming out soon. But I just got to say that whatever's happening, in Kevin Feige we trust, and that so far he has my full attention in terms of this show, and faith that this is going to be a great show. But that's the end of my review. I just want to say thank you guys for watching, coming and watching this video. My name is Jedi Mike. You can also follow me at Jedi Mike 7 on YouTube and Instagram. And please comment down below and let me know what you guys think about this review. And we have more reviews to come. And I just want to say thank you guys for watching the video. Until next time, I'm Jedi Mike. Bye bye.